So I added saving the state of my to-do app here. I added saving the state to local storage so that when you refresh the page, it'll remember what you're doing. So let's see here. So this is the live version. It's up on Netlify. And as you can see here, I've got these items. Normally, um, since it starts out with a to-do array with just one, fake task in there, I had laundry as sort of a default. When you restarted the page, it would start with that. Previously, if you saw my previous video, I had this, didn't have this in the constructor. I had it just as the separate set state, this.state, or the state by itself. I have it switched here in the constructor because while I was trying to figure out where to put a certain line of code, I thought maybe it needed to be in constructor. Maybe I'll go and refactor that back out because I don't even need that whole constructor part. Anyway, that got off topic already. So normally since it had that default, when you hit reload, it would just go back to that one task and start over. But now I've got it where I reload, it remembers what I've got. Okay, I can even now I should be able to totally close this. Let's see if I can remember this. Okay, I should be able to totally close this window and come back to it, and it should remember. Come on, internet, you can do it. Here we go. See, it even remembered that these were crossed out, but not totally deleted. Nice, right? Okay, so how did we manage that? Not that hard, but there were a little gotcha or two. All right, so we figured out that there's a thing called local storage, right? And the way that you add something to local storage is pretty straightforward. You say local storage, and here it is, local storage.set item. You give it a name of what you want it to be. It's like a key and a value, basically sort of like an object, right? The key and the value. Trick is it can only be a string, so it can't be an object. The thing you put in can't be this.state.todo array is an array, right? So it can't be in there. It needs to be string as a string. So you can use the JSON.stringify to make it a string. Okay, so no problem. Now, when you get it back, you're gonna have to parse JSON back, and it'll go back. But no problem. Those are like the inverse operations, right? JSON.stringify and JSON.parse, right? So what I decided, and I messed around with a couple times finding where this needs to happen, and I came into some errors, and finally came out with this solution. So component did mount. Well, let's think about like how components work. What happens first? You have your constructor, right? That's the first thing that happens. And in our constructor, we're setting up this fake task or our default task here. So we have the array that has this in it, right? Then it's going to go to, not component did mount yet because it has to render first. Component did update, no. It's going to, out of all the stuff I have here, render is going to be next, right? So it's going to render the form, and then it's going to say, okay, what's next? This component did mount. So what happens in component did mount? It's going to check if there is no local storage.to-do list state, then we're going to set it. Local storage.set item to-do list state. This is the same thing I said before, right? That I showed you before, where you set it this way. And I'll tell you why I had to check it if it's there first in a minute. Okay, so then it says if it's not there, put it there, right? Okay. Then local to do array .json.parse local storage.toListState. Okay, so I'm saving to a variable what's in there, because remember it's coming back as a string, so I wanted to parse it so it's back into an array again. So then we have the local to-do array, and we're setting the state. So changing it from that default laundry task to whatever this is. So it's looking into my local storage after the initial render, right? It's looking into my local storage, finding the array, and then setting the state with that array. Okay? And it'll render again, right? This time, since it's already mounted, it won't do component did mount, it'll do component did update, right? Okay, so then it says, well, what happens on component did update? Local storage that's set item. Well, all right, so what's going to make it update, right? It's whenever I have all these events like the submit the form or change the form, the text in the form. Whenever those happen, it's doing this, setting the item in local storage, right? Local storage that's set item, the to-do list state, and changing of this. So it's changing all the time. Every time I type something, it's changing. All right. So why did I have to? So that should be great. It should be done, right? But the problem I was getting was, and this is why I needed this. If the first time through, before you set local storage that's set item to do list state, that doesn't, if it doesn't exist, right? It's undefined. So when over here, when it says you want to parse it, where's the line about JSON.parse local storage to do list state. When you do JSON.parse on something that's undefined, because it hadn't been set yet, that's what I'm saying over here. If it's not there yet, the first time we open this app, it's not there in local storage. It's never been. This does not exist in local storage. This to-do list state does not exist in local storage. And we try to parse it. It was giving me this error. Uncaught syntax error, unexpected token in JSON at position 0. And this Stack Overflow told me that that's what happens. When you try to do parse something that's undefined, you get that error. So the solution was to check. If it's not there, that is, if it's undefined, well, we need to define it, right? So that's what I'm doing here. If it's not there, set it to whatever it happens to be at the time, which is, in this first case, the first time around, will be that laundry state, right? So now it's there. There's something there at least. So when it parses it, it doesn't have undefined here. So then I can move on and set the state. So then every time, again, I think we went through this way, but now it's all fine. It's there. It has no problem parsing it. And you go, every time anything updates, tell you what I'll do. I'm going to put these, well, I have these console logs in here because that's how I was trying to figure out when and where it was actually updating, whether it was or was not updating. No, I've got all those console logs out. I don't want to put them back in, but let me just say that those were in there to help me figure out when and where it was actually. That's how I figured out, which lifecycle method to put it in. Okay, so long story short, the set state or set local storage is pretty straightforward. Local storage, set item, give it a name, give it a string. Again, it has to be a string, right? So we can stringify it here. When you want to get it back, it's local storage. JSON.parse, that same thing, local storage.to-do list state, parse it, and save it to a variable, and then put that variable into our state, the set state. I suppose I probably could just take this piece right here and replace local to-do array over here, but that, I don't know. It seemed cleaner to me to save it to a variable first. So that was the only gotcha, was really the first time through this doesn't exist, so when you parsed it, it gave me that JSON error. So all we did was add a line that says check if it's not there. If there's nothing there, put something there before it tries to parse, so we don't get that error. Other than that, it was fairly straightforward. Um, Hopefully this helps somebody. Maybe you can implement in your version of whatever app you are working on. Again, hope this helps. Thanks.